Welcome to this edition of True House Stories. I'm Lenny Fontana coming out of New York City, and we're having a very rude awakening. We're crossing over the path again, transatlantic, with our boat, full steam ahead, full power to London. Okay? I'm going to say this man is a good friend of mine. Know him a long time, couple decades. And I know all of you always say, damn, Lenny, you got a lot of friends. But what happens is because we all work together, we've hung together, we've partied together, we went to see each other play music together. It's just somehow, some way, as the years go on, you just keep those friendships. And maybe you don't speak that often, but I'm going to tell you one thing that brings everyone closer is music. Music has a funny way of healing. Music has a funny way of also bridging the gaps in a sense. Time goes like that, right? But a record could take you back 30 plus years instantly in your mind. And that's something that a lot of us come from, that era of making records that, you know, would stick around for a minute or two, become what we call cobweb classics. This man knows how to do it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because he started out DJing at the WAG and those great clubs in London. And then went on, from DJing, saw an opportunity to create a promotions company called Rude Awakening, which I am proud to say that he was doing a lot of that work for us when we were actually doing physical mailings. And that was an important time in the late 90s, 2000s to make sure all the top guys had your records because there was no social media back then. He'll tell you about that. He also took a quick little break, but then when he came back, he took a full assessment and decided to call himself Risk Assessment, became a hot producer. He dabbled around with it, but now he's serious and he keeps putting out some great tracks. What else am I going to say? He is the man. Record promoter, DJ, all the above. And that's the thing about it. When I say all of the above, you have to be someone that is like a juggler. You got to know how to make this work, to make that work, because each piece somehow, like a puzzle, they all come together. So with all the years of experience, he saw a void and he found it. So no less to say anymore except to get Mr. Glyne Brathwaite on the show right here on True House, a legend himself from the
Love
UK.
that. Thank you. Thank you, Lenny. Glad to be here. Very happy.
Welcome to the show that, amongst great alumni,
Mhm.
that it's a wonderful experience. I'm so happy we're able to have this platform to share these great stories. And your story is going to make it much better.
Nice. Like that.
So, where are you at now in your life before we get started? How are things going?
Things are going good. Musically, better than I could ever expected. I'm a dad to an 18-year-old who stopped sort of like having anything to do with me once he became 14. So it's kind of now I'm out here in this new, fresh world. You know, my son's still there. Don't get me wrong, but now I feel that I can go out there and chase my dreams and make great music and just enjoy the rest of our lives. So it's good.
Tell me as a dad how that was like to say to his son, to tell him, Dad, I really, and he didn't say it. It's just the body, the way the body talks, you just know that,
Yeah.
like, yo, leave me be.
It
What's that
hurt
like?
me. It hurt me. Lockdown is when I saw that change where my son was getting to the point where I wasn't the number one priority in his life. And in the lockdown times, it kind of I started to see it. But it's a rude awakening, but it's still it's just watching your child grow up and make the same mistakes you made. You just got to be there to support it for him. He's a good guy. He's a very, very good kid. I'm very proud of him. So I'm very lucky to have him as a son.
Well, then I can only say one word: bless thee be.
Yes.
You did a good job, Daddy-O. All right, if you want to know about this story of the risk assessment man, but there was a life before risk assessment, a big life. How does music find Glyne as a young kid, or the opposite? You find the music.
Well, for us, when we were kids, no social media. black, white, Indian, Chinese, all growing up on an estate. Radio on all the time, whether it was my mum playing it or my brother playing it or my brother buying records. So music came in the way of kind of more of the ska type specials, Madness, UB40 types of things. The Police, then groups like Michael Jackson, for instance, the Off the Wall album, Nation, the group Imagination. We would just, when we were young, the number one things in our lives was music and girls. And then when you got a little bit older, really nice clothes, you know? Music was always a massive part because we didn't have social media. We'd go out with our little tape recorders or our little radios or personal stereos. And there was always music in the playground. And I'm talking like 7 or 8. It was so important. It was so important as well to dance. You had to know how to dance. So music was just around all the time with everybody, especially the older lot as well, who like introduced me to records like Computer Love and groups like Maze. And yeah, there was always something going on with music, tiny little free festivals. And so music was just a massive, huge part of our lives, you know? And that's how it found us because that's all we had.
And I always bring that up to everyone. There was only an X amount of TV channels,
Yeah.
and there's only so many radio stations,
Yeah.
and there was no such thing as a computer yet.
No, no, there wasn't.
Imagine everyone, no social media, no.
No, I wish we never had it. I wish social media never came along because young people are missing out on so much right now. You know, they learn stuff in their bedrooms by looking on their phones. We learned it as we went out, as we moved every single day, you know. So they don't know what they're missing. You know, music was such an important part of life and still is.
Yeah. You know what? It's just sad that we're all finding that music is becoming dispensable.
Yes.
It's not like it was up until the early 2000s where it really meant something. Now it's just between Spotify and everything and all digital stores, there's more than 250,000 to almost a million singles a week. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. I always remember a time when do you remember when Move to Swing did Wall of Sound Critical, right? And it hadn't come out yet, but it was being played on the radio a lot. And I remember standing in Black Market and watching 5 ordinary people who just buy vinyl, there wasn't DJs, you know, coming and asking for that record because they heard it on the radio. And for months and months and months that was played, but you couldn't get it. And when you got it, it was the most exciting thing. That doesn't really happen anymore. I think that, you know, a record will probably last 2 weeks if you're lucky. And then it's just gone. And then it's done.
2 weeks.
Two
It
weeks.
seems like 3 days, if
Yeah,
that. It comes
yeah,
up, it
yeah,
goes in,
yeah.
and
And then
it's like, ooh.
gone. Crazy. Crazy. Crazy.
How does someone like you get around that? With understanding what you remember sometimes could be a curse because you remember when we sound like the elders. Oh, it was really good back
Back
then.
in the day.
It was back in great in the back of the day. But how do you shut that off in your mind and work with today's way?
Well, you know, for instance, I DJ'd at the BBE store probably about, I think it was last Good Friday, and I knew that every DJ that was going to be playing there were all probably going to play the same records. I also knew that you're going to hear a lot of old stuff, and I was probably going to play a couple of old things, but I knew they wouldn't be old things that everyone else would have played. So I get around it because I think that the length of time that I've been in it is a lot longer than most of the people that are coming up right now. So I get around it by, yes, I'll dig a classic, but not a classic that they would ever think of, you know, because I've got that brain. I feel quite good when it comes to playing out and dropping the odd old record because I know that it's not a record that they've heard in a long time, or they've probably never heard it. So it's not difficult for me. I think the thing is I go on Track Source and Beatport every day looking for new music every single day. And one of the things that baffles me is there's lots of fantastic music out there, but a lot of it doesn't get played. So I find that strange, really.
How do you fix that problem? What do you? I shouldn't say how. What do you think is the medicine for this?
Well, so I like nice clothes as well, right? So I buy brands. So I look for a brand. So when it comes to me with music, I look for a brand, a Kerry, a Louis, a Mood to Swing, or a label, not anymore, but like Strictly or a Defected. I look for music by artists, and then I look for music via labels. I think a lot of people look at music via genre, and that's the problem. Because I'm a house music producer and a house music DJ, so I like everything. When we got into it, there was no genres. It was just house music. And I think a lot of these people are stuck in the genre. So they're going to play what they hear in that genre instead of looking left and right and back and front to see all the other genres that are making great music.
Interesting. Interesting. I know, because I find that's what a lot of the traditional DJs do. They stick with brands they know or producers they feel comfortable with, and they check. But I don't think the new school looks at it that way. I think they go by the one chart,
Yeah,
because
that
you can tell in the music when you hear these guys play out, they're all playing exactly the same.
exactly. And it's weird for me because it's like vocal after vocal after vocal after vocal. And because I'm always looking and like seeing the new music that comes out, I'll be in a club and I'll be thinking, how come he's not playing that? Or how come he's not playing this? And then I'll listen to three or four DJs and they're all playing the same records, even though they heard that other DJ playing. I mean, one of the cool things about going out back in the day was you knew that when you went out with the latest music, somebody was going to play the latest things that came out, but you could always go back to the other stuff that you knew they didn't have and play that, and it'd be just as good. Now, it's just everybody playing the same records, and it's a bit frustrating when I go out because I tend to leave very quickly because I'm hearing everything that I know. I know everything. There's nothing I don't know. So
So the art of train spotting has gone away.
completely, completely. Do you remember what it was like when we'd be in the clubs and you'd hear someone play something and you'd be hunting that record for months and months and months and months. And when you got it, you played it to death. You bought two copies, you played the dub, you really kind of worked it. I don't think people put in that much effort anymore to find music or to play that way. But it was everything. It was absolutely everything. You
Well,
know.
that's why you had trendsetters
Yes.
and then followers.
Yes.
But my man, let's go back in time in the time ship of Glyne's world, and let's take us back to the when it's all okay. So, do you have musical training at all in any?
None whatsoever. None
Okay,
whatsoever.
so take us on the journey from the Caribbean to England and beyond.
Well, when I first started discovering, should I say, garage music, and when I say garage music, I mean some people like Gwen Guthrie and people like that. And Kiss FM was probably a massive influence in my music because of what they used to put on the radio. Norman J, Desi D, really great DJs. I didn't know what that music was called, and Leroy Burgess and all of those great records were. That was my first kind of finger in the music, really. And it was I was 16 years old. I remember it because it was 1985, and the party that Kiss FM used to do was in a place called the Ambassadors Hotel in Euston. So that's when I first heard that kind of music. And when we used to go out to clubs at that age, the Cat's Whiskers, Tiffany's in Wimbledon, there was lots of kind of 80s funk type stuff as well as that. But then what happened is the breakdancing started coming in and the kind of electro-y type stuff. So now I was into that. I followed every kind of trend that happened, the body popping, that kind of music, Eric B and Rakim coming along later on, that kind of vibe. And that was going on for a while. And I've got a good friend called Steve Bicknell who I've known him since I was 11 and he was 14. We're still great friends to this day. And he was a DJ that he sort of DJ'd in his bedroom, would play the same kind of records that we were talking about, but started bringing in the odd Todd Terry record and Larry Heard record, and that was coming in. And even though at that time the music that was being played was a mixture of all of those genres, it was still like the house was kind of coming in. And then around sort of 1987, 88, when it really hit and the rave sort of started coming in and DJ Pierre was doing stuff as Future and all of that. and that whole rave scene kicked in, that was when I would say I was hooked. And I think the reason why I was hooked, because even with all of that music and that great music that was happening, racism was a massive thing. Do you know what I mean? It still is really, but it was worse when we were younger. But once that kind of rave scene came in and the drug culture and stuff like that, racism just disappeared overnight. You know, especially racism towards me and my friends, and just meeting loads and loads of amazing people. So it was kind of, there's always been music in my life, and it's really difficult to pinpoint certain parts and certain genres, but it has always been a massive part of, what we needed and what we had, you know?
Speaking of that, you are a true Londoner.
Yep, I am.
Did you realize that at this raving era, that there was a whole thing going on in Manchester with the North and the Hacienda? Did you have any inclination of that, or were you in your own bubble?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I only realized that quite recently, that they were having the same thing. I saw a little clip and people talking about it. And I just thought it was just us. I really thought it was just us. I didn't think it was going on anywhere. I mean, the way it happened is, suppose there was like a big rave, like energy. There was energy, biology. What was the other one? Energy, biology, and another sunrise, right? And the way those parties would happen, we'd all be hanging around in Clapham Common in London to get a phone call from somebody. And we'd go to a phone box and we'd call a number, and then they'd tell us to go to another place, and we'd call another number and tell us to go to another place, and we'd call another number. And then all of a sudden, we're ending up in a rave 200 miles away. And you're driving up. We don't know how we got there. We don't know how we made it. And you're just driving up in the middle of the night to this thing filled with a big fun fair and, massive speakers on the back of a lorry, and all of these types of things, and thousands upon thousands of people dancing all night, all day, having the time of our lives. And we only thought it was happening to us. We didn't know that it was going on anywhere else. We just thought it was our thing. So no, I didn't have a clue until recently that that kind of vibe was happening all over the place.
Ain't that some craziness? That is so
Mm.
crazy. Well, you got to take into consideration there was no way to discuss it on a social platform yet. There was nothing. There was no fantasy or thought of social platforms. The closest thing would be if you went to uni, maybe a paper would speak about it, or
Yes.
on one of those boards, with somebody writing a clip of something with Xerox pages saying "rave here tonight,
Yep.
call this
Yep.
number."
Yep.
Otherwise, you didn't really know, right?
No, well, the funny thing about it, I remember sitting around in my friend's house one day, and he had all these flyers on his wall and loads of things that were happening, and we were looking for something to do, and there was a party on that night on the flyer. And when we got to the party, it was my friend's party. The guy Steve Bicknell and everybody from my estate was there, and I was shocked because I didn't know that it was his party, even though he was my friend. And we just rocked up over there and had a great time. We were just looking at flyers to see where we could go. I mean, I know it sounds alien to people now, but that's what it was like. What should we do? Let's look at a flyer. Oh, we'll go there. And we ended up into so many places: warehouses, empty offices, people's houses, gardens. I mean, it was just fantastic. Fantastic.
How did you find yourself seeing this as a not occupational career, but a chance, a path to a music situation? How did you find that?
Uh, well, first of all, I had early temps. I think the first Techniques 1200 I got. So I had two Techniques belt drive decks when I was 14. And it was around the time, you remember that song, Jocelyn Brown, Love's Gonna Get You, Baby. Love's Gonna Get You, yes, I am. It was around that time because I remember that record so much. And I sold those two decks and bought one Techniques turntable. And I was really sick that day. I remember I ran and bought it from the Vinyl Zone, which was owned by Jazzy M at the time. And I bought that deck. No, I didn't. I actually got it from somewhere else. Anyway, and my friend went and paid for it for me because I was sick. I had really bad asthma at the time. And I got the deck and I was using it, and then I lent it to him and he never ever gave it back. So it was kind of like, that was my first bit in trying to get into the music. And then after I lost that deck, I never got into it again for a good little while. But it was kind of like, I would say, when did I really start to I think probably 80. When I was getting lots of gigs at Energy, when Energy moved to the clubs, and they moved to the Brixton Academy, and they had about 4 or 5 rooms. I was always getting to play at those things, and Fantasy was another rave that I played at a lot. So I would say I'd probably just you were just buying the records because you could. There was no CD, there was no anything. So you're buying all of this vinyl because you want to hear this record, right? That you love and that you've heard in a rave or a club, and so you kind of fall into it that way. And especially back then with the raves, there was like Carl Cox, Paul Trouble Anderson, Evil Eddie Richards, all of those guys. But you never cared about the DJ. Like you didn't think, oh, it's Paul Trouble playing or it's Carl Cox playing. It was just a list of DJs. You didn't really know where the DJ was. You didn't look at him at all. You were just there to dance. You wasn't there to do anything else. And so it wasn't like you wanted to be a DJ like the guys that you've heard. It was none of that. It's just that it was the progression. You had the music, you had the vinyl, you wanted to mix into something else. So you ended up getting 2 decks and a mixer. And the first mixer that I got was a realistic mixer. And you couldn't even queue up in a headphone. There was no way for you to queue. It was really, you just had to do your thing. Even with the belt drive, there was no pitch, but you just did it with your finger, and got to do it that way. So it found me as a natural way of playing the two records that you wanted to hear together at home. It wasn't about wanting to be a DJ. It's just that that's what you wanted to do.
Did anyone physically show you about beat mixing, beat matching, or any of that stuff, or was that just trial and error?
It was trial and error because my friend Steve Bicknell, I used to go to all the gigs with him. And I used to sit down and like we'd turn up to a club and he'd walk up to the mixer and, put the headphone in and I'd be sitting back watching and thinking, how do you know what to do? Like how do you know what to do? But because I don't know, I wanted to learn, but I didn't ever want to ask him, so I never ever did. And one day I was playing at a little thing and he turned up and I got really, really, really nervous and he just said to me afterwards, he goes, Coy, you picked that up pretty quickly, didn't you? I was like, okay. But I used to come home after a rave, put the headphones on, because I don't want to wake up my mum. I don't want to, that's the last person I want to wake up. And just practice and practice and practice and practice. It was just great. I mean, you just fell into it. I mean, some people have it right and some people don't. But I got it pretty quickly. Pretty quickly.
Could you imagine now, without the sync or the pioneer generation, if they had to acquire belt-driven turntables, no less direct drive turntables, how many DJs would never exist if you had to go through all that
I
training?
think a lot of DJs probably wouldn't exist even now if you put them in front of a rotary mixer. I think lots of DJs that have sort of worked on controllers or Pioneer, when they come up to something that has no lights and just knobs and no screen to look at, that's when the panic will kick in. I saw that happen quite recently. I won't mention the name, but someone was playing, and when they saw that the rotary was there, they panicked. So I think don't get me wrong, I have two Pioneer CDJ thousands and I have a Alpha Recordings Rotary, right? But when I go into a club and there's a Pioneer V10 or any kind of Pioneer and I look at that mixer, like for me, the effects and stuff, I don't know how to use those or whatever, but I'll get around it. I don't panic. As long as I can see where the fader is and I can see where the CDJs are, I'm totally cool. But I think that comes down to experience. So yeah, they will struggle a lot because even if I tried to show many people over the years. My friend Sinjin used to run a DJ workshop thing at the Royal Festival Hall where you would teach people over 2 days to DJ. And it's mad how people will put a hand on a bit of vinyl and don't know how to pull it back and the way they'll do it. But to us, it's just simple, right? We've got that smooth. But when you're trying to show somebody that's never done that before, it really is difficult for them. So it must have been difficult for us too, right? But we had to do it on our own. Nobody taught us.
There was nothing before it. And
No.
you had to kind of train your ear
Yeah.
and your brain to understand timing,
Yeah.
when to actually mix it.
Yeah.
There was no watch the grid
No.
and then hit the play button.
No. And if you had to find that record, because if you're playing a record, right? But if you're like me, and I'm sure like you never really know what you're going to play next. You spend that whole 7 minutes of that record trying to find that what you're going to put on next. But that's going to run out. There is no loop. Do you understand me? So you got to be quick. You got to, and people always used to say to me, "How come you don't smile behind the desk?" I said, "I'm in the zone. I'm trying to think what else to play. I haven't like got this set up where I've got the list of everything in a row. So it's a job. I see it as a job, and it's a job that I enjoy, and it means everything. It's about, for me, I said this to my friend the other day. When I play out, I'm looking to wipe the floor with everybody else. I'm not going there to have a good time with that DJ. I'm going to be better and better. And that's just the way I've always thought. You've got to be better than the person that was on before. Otherwise, what's the point?
Sure. And that was always the key, or to pick up the baton where they left off and take it to another level,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
It was, and it's not about always playing the newest, hottest records. It's also understanding how to program for what's in front of you, right?
But I hear these great stories. Willie Washington, who I'm working with a lot, he wrote Trouble by Joy Cardwell. He wrote Mood to Swing's Can't Get Away featuring Caroline Johnson. And he wrote Paula Ralph Ain't No Running Away. And he tells me all of these stories about the Paradise Garage. He tells me about Frankie Knuckles, the Warehouse, and talks to me about all these DJs, and especially Tony Humphries and Kerry Chandler, and how these guys used to play it back in the day. And just to hear him talk about it, I mean, he talks about it so well that I want to record it and put it on a track, because he talks about the way Tony would play a record 5, 6, 7 times a night, and by the end of the night, you will love it, or talk about the way Kerry like programmed his music and his production, and Frankie, who was the DJ's DJ. I wish I was there for that, because I don't think we have really had anyone like that over here that people can talk about in that way. For me, anyway. I mean, Trouble was the guy, but I don't think people really know Trouble in the 80s. I think people knew Trouble in the 90s. I knew him not as a friend, but his music in the 80s. Do you see what I mean? So it's when I hear how great and how the way people reacted to music in America back in the day, I just wish that I was there to see that.
Well, you know, the great Larry Levan did that. I talk about this many times. A lot of the DJs back in that time had resident spots and they played all night. So you can work a record to a night 4 or 5 times, six
Yeah,
times to train, to introduce it. There's been pushback on stuff like that over the years where the crowd originally didn't like it 2 or 3 or 4 times played. It wasn't to the seventh or eighth time on the same night that they were like, now we love it. But there's been things where the DJ is pressing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and the people just don't get it.
I think it goes down to, like, for instance, so you've got there's about 3 or 4 nights. If we talk about soulful, we go about on the soulful house, for instance, and we've got, I think for soulful house in the UK, it's for like 40 to 65-year-olds, and those guys are happy to hear the same records over and over again. It's a bit like going to a soul party, because they see it as a get together. Do you understand what I mean? So I don't see many DJs taking the chances that they used to. A lot of people play safe. Although I went to Garage City the other day. It was a Dance for Stevie event for Bobby Zoo, and I think they had Ricky Morrison, Booker T, Bobby Zoo, Neil Pearce. Who else was there? A girl called, I forgot her name. Loza from London. Loads of different people, and I heard most of the people. Grant Nelson. And I was listening to a lot of different people, and because it was a Garage City event, you were hearing stuff from back in the day. But then I popped into the room and I heard Neil Pearce playing, and he played like he played to me like somebody that plays out all the time. He played old records that I had not heard for a very, very, very long time. And I listened to his set playing 3 or 4 records, and I thought, okay, that's kind of the way to do it, especially when you're doing a classics night. Pull tunes that people haven't heard rather than the ones that we've been hearing for 40 years. So that was really good.
Okay, I'm with you. I mean, you do have your tastemakers and guys that know how to put it together. Moving on to where you step in to start your promotions business. What was the moment that you found that void and needed to fulfill it? You know what I'm saying? Like there was a void. You said, "Oh, I could do this and I can make this work."
Yeah. Well, I was working for Power Promotions. So Power Promotions was a massive promotion company. They're still around today. And they'd be doing mail outs of about 1,000. So I hit them up and I said to them, look, I want to come and work for you guys. And I'll do it for free. And there was a guy there, I think his name was Rob, because it's a very long time ago. And he told me to come down. And I came down and I was working, doing the mail outs and stuff and really getting into it. And they really liked me, and they knew that the kind of music that I was into, because they were mailing out like about 1,000 at a time, dealing with things like anything from pop to house mixes to, I mean, back then it was crazy, right? There was a lot of money in the music business. And then they wanted me to start a section and we called it Deep Impact. And there was a label called Huge Tunes, massive label back in the day. And they decided to start a label called Airtight. So my first the labels that I was loving at the time were labels like Large Music from Chicago, Jeff Louis Benedetti's label Soulshine. So I just hit those guys up and I said to them, look, I'd really like to do your promotion. I'm working for this promotion company called Power Promotions. We set up a new subsidiary called Deep Impact. I'd really like to use you guys. And they were like, yeah, straight away. So I started to do Soulshine and Large, and plus dealing with the more kind of new, deeper labels in the UK that were setting up. And then after doing that for quite some time, I left there after about maybe a year or 2 years and decided to set up Rude Awakening. But I set up Rude Awakening because it'd be a rude awakening to these guys when I leave and set up my own thing. So I set up Rude Awakening promotions at home. And I just went for all the US labels that I loved. There wasn't many UK labels around at the time. If they were using Power. And I didn't want to take or touch any of Power's label because they controlled the charts, believe it or not. They were really tight with Music Week, which was the magazine that dealt with all the charts and stuff. So they were really big people and I couldn't mess with these guys. So I just went for the labels that I loved, your Large, Naked Music, MAW. I did MAW as well. Soulshine, Wave. Oh my God, there was so many. Code Red. I think I mentioned Naked Music. Like we did absolutely everybody, and the way I was able to gain more and more and more releases, more and more record labels was from the Miami Winter Music Conference, which we all know about that. And what I did to get more and more labels, I made up all these folders, all these really, really nice folders. And we all went over there with my partner, Dana, who was running the business with me. And we went over there with all of those folders. We went over there with loads of Rude Awakening Promotions t-shirts. I was set up all, and I'd also get all the record companies that I was doing to send over vinyl to the hotel. And then I'd go over there, we'd give out all the different folders to all the labels that we loved, and all the DJs from Terry Hunter to Jovan to not Kenny and Louis because they were like the untouchable type people, but most of the DJs that were willing to be accessible, Deli G and all them, and get them to come around to the hotel and pick up music, and then the word would get around. So it was really easy for me to get new business. It was just incredible. I just ended up practically doing every single label. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. And then the UK label started coming. I did a couple of, subsidiary releases for Defected, and just it's had so many labels and so much business. And
Incredible.
yeah, it
It's
was
incredible
great.
time.
It was great. It was just
Also what that process was like for American label to get promotional copies, physicals to you and all that, because it's a
right.
different era.
Well, it was. Well, first of all, the way I spoke to these labels was with AIM. Do you remember AIM, which was the online thing that you could speak to people and do what we're doing now, but wasn't as cool as that? I don't think we had cameras. You could just talk. So really, it was I could either get a record label's fax machine because everybody used fax or their AIM. And I think the biggest mistake I ever made with Rude Awakening was this was I would say to record labels, I'll tell you what, you give me 100 records, I mail out 50 records and sell 50 records, but we will pay for the shipping. So every label was like, yeah, yeah, great, great, great. So I'm thinking, okay, those 50, we're just going to sell them straight away. But it wasn't like that. If it was an MAW release, it sold. If it was like a Kerry release, it sold. But where when I was dealing with King Street, for instance, and they'd give us like, I don't know, say they'd give us 6 or 7 releases by loads of different artists. But the one with the MAW mixes, they give us 4, right? And the one with, I don't know, I won't mention any names, but the kind of more harder stuff, they'd give us loads. So what would happen is we'd sell those MAW for just like that. But those ones that, the lot harder mixes, that kind of stuff, we wouldn't get rid of that, and it'd be sell or return. So you wasn't really covering yourself financially. And when we tried to do it where you pay for the postage, or you pay us to do the promotion, that's when it was different. That's when people didn't really want to do the promotion that way. They only wanted us to do it where you send over the whole lot and we pay for the postage. So that's how it happened. And then we would I had such a massive database of people, but only a certain amount of records, right? So you kind of had to hit your CJ McIntoshes, who was really killing it right now, because I was only really sending stuff to people over here. Your Bobby and Steves, who were like big, like the UK guys that were on the kind of soulful tip. So it's really, there was no real cost to the label, to be honest. The cost was really to us. It was always to us.
It's incredible. It's just so incredible because considering what you do now, you send over a track and it's like digital thing gets sent
Instantly.
out. Back then, you had to really think it through and plan for the long game.
Yeah, you did. You did. I mean, I know I'm jumping forward a bit quick, but the reason why we stopped, we lasted 7 years. We did 7 years of, there was a couple of things that happened in those 7 years. So one of the things that happened is I ended up getting seizures, but I didn't know what was going on. I went up to Black Market Records with my friend, and we went to the record. He tells me this story because I don't remember what happened. And he said we was up in Black Market and we went and dropped some promos off the Black Market, and we was on the way back in his car, and he said I just fell on him. And he said to me, Glyne, stop mucking about, stop mucking about. And he's like, oh, you're not mucking around. This is what he's telling me. And he said there was an ambulance across the road, and he ran over and called the ambulance. And, next minute I'm waking up and they're saying to me, Mr. Brathwaite, stay where you are. You're having another one. And I'm thinking, another what? I didn't know what they were talking about, but I was having seizures. And with all the tests and everything, they just said it was all stress related. Now, I don't know about stress because I do know that I was working during the day. I was doing the UK labels, and then once we got to 5 o'clock in the evening, I'm doing the US labels. So house music and music never left me. It was like I turned this whole music thing into a business, and I feel that it was just probably too much for me. But at the time, it didn't feel that way because you're going out, I'm DJing, I'm getting loads and loads of gigs because everybody wants to be on the mailing list, right? And we both know how it works. If you've got something to offer, then people are always coming your way, right? It was always that way. It wasn't about having to go out and show your face. If you were in the industry, you got the gigs. So it was, yeah, so that happened. And another thing that happened as well is once things like AIM happened and people were sending tracks to each other, and record labels would say to us, what's the point in us doing promotion with you when everyone's got our record already? Because they'll give it to one person, tell them not to give it to someone. That person will give it to that person, tell them not to give it to someone, and so forth. And then it kind of died. So it was, and another big hit to us was September the 11th, because a lot of our record labels that we dealt with in the States were doing a lot of their business in the World Trade Center. So when the World Trade Center went down, we lost probably about 50% of our labels overnight. I mean, they came back in the end, but there was lots of things that were happening, digital circumstances, so forth. And 2007, my son was born, so it was great. That was like, okay, that's finished. Now I've got this job to, take care of my son and have a wonderful time with him. So yeah.
It's funny you mentioned about the world 9/11. We also had a thing called Napster.
Right. Yeah, yeah. That's right. And they were taking stuff. I remember that. And it was such a big thing to watch and hear it because it was all alien to us.
We actually sat there and went, why is my records all online?
Yeah,
Why is everybody's, wait a minute, why is everything online? It went from, we weren't in the digital business to now everything was free.
yeah, everything.
It was like, wait a minute, now what?
Yeah,
Now
without
what?
even now it's tough. Even now it's tough. I have some friends that, release music and they do promotion, right? And they mail out these three, four, five, 600, downloads of, and I'd be like, but that's your market. Everybody's going to have it now. Do you understand what I mean? And it's still, you can still get it for free. I mean, I'm very lucky that I release music and I do well, and it charts really well in its stuff. But it's like, if people want your stuff for free, they can still get it. They can still,
True. Very true. Very true. You go on YouTube, pull stuff down.
yeah, there you go.
So it's, that game is the game. I mean, music again has become more of the calling card than it is actually a means to an end of making an income. You know,
Mm,
most people who are doing this are relying on the live side to do the gigs.
yeah. Well, yeah, but I'm a school teacher, believe it or not. People don't know, but I was a college lecturer, so I taught health, sports, and well-being. And before that, so, man, I told you in 2007, for instance, all the DJs, me, German Newell, Rap Saunders, we all got jobs at Apple, you know, because that was where the DJs went, right? We used their Macs for the studio, whatever. And we all got jobs at Apple in 2007. So when my son was born, I needed a job that was going to bring in real money because the DJing never dried up. I just had enough. It was, my biggest the big another mistake that I felt that I made was I turned house music into a business instead of keeping it as a hobby. It was my life in every way, shape, or form. So when I got out of it, it was good. I felt good getting out of it, and I got rid of all my vinyl. I got rid of my decks. I got rid of my mixer. All my friends used to call me the reluctant DJ, right? Because they'd always say Glyne DJs, and no one would ever know because I was just found a new lot of friends. Never really spoke about it. Never really went out. And like I said, we all got jobs working at Apple, and I was there for 7 years. And then I left Apple in 2014 and went to college to study youth work. And I did that for like a year or 6 months. Ended up getting a job in a place that was for children that were, withdrawn from schools and sent to this place. In the UK, we call it a people referral unit, where they've, been excluded from school. There's nowhere else for them to go, and they go there. And then I kind of fell into like doing learning support work and stuff like that. And then I went to a college in Clapham, and I was there for about 2 years. And they said to me, why don't you take the sports class? You've been in here before doing learning support. And I said, okay. And then all of a sudden I was teaching, and I was like a fish out of water. That's the way I felt. But my students were turning up to my classes and coming in, and they really liked that. So I did that right up until the end of the lockdown, and the whole kind of, I know I'm jumping, but the whole kind of risk assessment thing sort of started in 2016. And it was like, okay, I'd done a couple of tracks back in the day under my name and under the GB experience and stuff like that. And I would do a lot of that stuff with Brent Lawrence. I'm out of Seattle. I'd go over there every year. And JJ and Chris Lum, I'd do stuff with them as well in San Francisco, and never really took it seriously. And then in 26, I thought, okay, I want to come out and be risk assessment. I'm not going to tell anybody. I didn't tell a single person that I was doing this stuff. I just started to make music, put it out, and I have to say, it started to do well straight away. And yeah, and then by the time years later, people are like, I never knew you were risk assessment. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, and now I've never looked back. It's been great. It's been really good.
So your son being born really pretty much, and the change from the analog to digital business were really the two pieces that you said. Apple Music became part of your journey
Yep.
financially, of course, to keep a roof over your head, and then going back to school and then teaching. So how long now are we teaching? How long?
So I was teaching there. So it's from 2016 till, what was the lockdown? Was the lockdown till 2020? Was it, or 2018? Man, those 2 years that we have really messed up my head. But yeah, I was doing that, and even in the lockdown, I was teaching, and my students were all logging in, and it was going really well. But when I set up the record label, because I also set up the record label Stereotype, and the people go, "Why'd you call it Stereotype?" And I said, because when I was a little kid, we had a stereo, and stereotype, when people would stereotype you, right? Cool. So it was kind of, I'm really talking about the stereo. And I thought, right, let me do, because I'd been doing lots of stuff for different labels, Midnight Riot, just loads of different labels. Stuff was doing okay, but by the time you got paid, it was nothing. So I set up Stereotype in the lockdown, just to release my own kind of disco-y, edit type things. Not the original production stuff, but the more kind of disco stuff. And that's how that was started as well. That was how, just by chance, you're going to do something, hope that it works, and everything worked.
And the experiment worked.
Mm,
It worked well. I mean, inclusive of myself. When
mm.
I saw the risk assessment coming out, I didn't put Glyne to risk.
No, that's it.
I just did, oh, this is really cool. This is some cool stuff coming out. That's all it was. I wasn't looking at, oh, it's Glyne's Productions that, oh,
Yeah.
it's just risk assessment.
Mm, yeah. No, I called the name. The name, I don't know why I thought of that name. I tried to find a name that wasn't used. And I had to do so many risk assessments at work. So many. But I also always loved the name. I always thought it was a cool name. And I saw that there was one track by one artist called Risk Assessment, and I could see that they hadn't done anything more. So that's how the name came about as well.
No, it's definitely catchy.
Mm.
So we keep on moving along. Of course, March, let me see. In the 2019, let's say by March of 2020, that's when that lockdown really kicked in.
Yep.
Around the 12th or the 16th, and then it went on for a while.
Yeah.
So
It
you
did.
so you stood in it. You got the record label running Stereotype in 2016,
Yep.
and at the same time you're doing the record label, which is a lot easier than back in the day because
It's
you
very easy.
you don't have to financially make a huge contribution
No.
with a lot of product. You can just get product out digitally without spending any money really.
That's so true, 100%. And I don't have any equipment at home. I use Earthwork Studios, which is the studio run by Shapeshifters and Lee Darlow and Matthew Bandy, where before the studio was just Lee Darlow and Matthew Bandy called Earthworks. They joined forces with the Shapeshifters probably about 6 months ago and moved to Barnet. So I don't have any equipment in this house. I go to that studio to do my work. Like in 2007, when my son, I decided to sell all the equipment and get a dining table so I can have dinner with my son instead of equipment being everywhere. The way I make music now, it's a hobby. So I love it because it's not a massive part of my life and I'm surrounded by equipment every day. So, yeah, good stuff.
What would you say your greatest assessment is? Is it your son, your career?
My son has always been I think that what I did with my son was I focused, which I don't think is a bad thing, but my son is and was everything to me and still is. And when my son became 14 and I want like the number one guy in his life, that was difficult for me. But just in how he's turned out and how he is and how polite he is and how much of a caring person he is just makes me proud and happy. So my greatest assessment is my son, but with the music, I feel quite lucky. I mean, every time I release a record and it does okay, it does baffle me. So I'm not walking around thinking, yeah, I'm going to put this out and it's going to. When I see it doing good, I'm like, oh, good. It almost makes me quite shy to even look, right? Because it's kind of, I'm very humble with it. It's just a surprise to me that there's so many producers out there, great producers, and my music still manages to be up there with the rest. So that's a real proud moment for me too. So both my son and the music, really.
Looking into the crystal ball forward,
Yep.
where do you see this journey going and how long do you want to keep on going with this journey?
Well, I'm 56 now. I do Pilates 5 days a week. I'm trying to stay active. I'm doing all of these things. If I'm still around when 66 and I still feel this way, then I'm happy. I'll keep going. Why this year? So I'm setting up a new label called Myrna, which is already kind of there. I'm just working on new music, which is more original stuff. My mum was named Myrna. I would have never have told anybody that, but that's my mum's name, and it's called Myrna Record Company. And I've got a lot of vocal stuff that I'm working on, which is going to be for that. But when it comes to getting remix, I want to get people like John Ciafone from Mood to Swing. And I know he still makes music, so I'd love to get someone like him and then maybe try and draw Lil Lewis out. Obviously, I know that they're not just going to come out for £1,000 for me, and I'm not going to pay her £20,000, but I want to be able to get the people that I miss so much because they were my favorite. Mood Swing, John Ciafone, Lil Lewis. Those were my heroes. Those were the people I loved because Daddy Tenaglia, because they were hard and soul. They had that little bit extra where they'll just flip it at the end. So really, it's about making really strong, pumping, soulful vocals and having really good remixes, but not remixes from the people that are supposedly killing it right now, but people that I really love, like Kerry. I love Kerry. That kind of vibe. I want to make music that when I ask these guys if they want to do a remix, they like the record so much that they just think, okay, I want to do it. So that's the next focus for the next few years, pushing Myrna in a big way. I'm working with Willie Washington. We've written some great, great songs with some great vocalists like Jasmina and people like that. I mean, it's really going to be different next year. Still going to be doing Stereotype with all the great disco-y cuts and stuff, but I'm also going to be doing some really strong musical music, but peak time stuff, not mellow at all.
Well, I think you're covering all the bases.
Yeah, got to be prolific, have to
I,
be.
I think I do you actually care to keep DJing, or is that just something you go? I like to do it, but
The DJing thing has never really taken off for me once I came back from risk assessment. It's really mad because for me, DJing, when I think of DJing, especially in the UK, and I go out, is karaoke as far as I'm concerned. I really go out and know every record. And it's like, is that really a gig? But, I don't go out that much, even though I make music and push music and it's being played everywhere. I don't really go out that much. And I think the way to get gigs these days is to show your face a lot. Like, for instance, I'm going to try and go to Southport this year. Now, people say, why don't you ask Southport to book you? And I said, because if I asked them to book me, they probably wouldn't want to pay me, but they'd probably want me to do it for free, right? I don't want to ever do that for anybody. I'm 56. I don't do that. So it's the case of you can't have both. Some people are lucky to have both, where they have loads of gigs and great music. I'm just lucky to have great music, and I'm happy with that. But I'm a DJ first, producer second. So if I got a really good gig, I mean, it's funny, the gigs that I've had since 2016, I'm going to be really honest. I had a gig in Manchester. Uh, Decks were that high, and I'm not kidding. I could not see the top of the CDJs, and I'm not kidding you, because they had it on a stage, so it was crazy. One of the speakers they had to take downstairs because it wasn't working, and the promoters were nowhere to be seen. That was crazy. And another gig where the memory stick didn't work, the faders were broken on the mixer, the left CDJ didn't work. Then I had another one where none of the equipment worked. Now, coming to DJ again in 2016 and onwards from a time where everything worked and everything was amazing, to coming out and the attention to detail is not the same anymore. Because when we were younger, it was all about the sound. That was really important. Now people just kind of walk into a venue, turn the electric on, and that was it. So my gigs that I had from 2016, I wasn't really happy with the production of the equipment and the venues, and that's been a thing that has happened a lot to me. The only place that I've played where everything was right was the BBE store. They just had everything. It worked. I could put my memory sticks in. Everything worked. And I was always like, if I've got the latest stuff, why doesn't a bar or a club have the latest stuff? So the DJ, and I'm a DJ first, a producer second, and if a good, gig comes along, I'll do it. But really, I'm just so focused on the music right now.
what the hell happened from the time you left till you came back? Did somebody forget to mention about we need real shit, real sound, real everything? What is that? Wait! Throw it all in the garbage, in the rubbish, in the no way! Come
Yeah,
on!
I know. I think that, it's a bit like music, right? Do you remember back in the day? I think I had this discussion with you about record companies, right? You had record companies You couldn't just start a label on your own. It wasn't that easy. So you had record companies. So it was really, really hard. And you'd go to a studio and you had engineers that really didn't know how to make beats. They were just engineers and knew how to put things together. It was a lot more harder. And it's the same with producers. It was a lot more harder, but now everything's easy. So what you got is, for somebody to promote a night, it's easy. They don't really need much money. But back in the day, you needed money. But now anyone can do a promotion, right? Doesn't They could be 20, 18, any age. But if they don't have the history of making sure that the equipment's right, they walk into a venue that's got decks and turn the lights on, that's what's happening. You just have a few people who care about the sound. You have Deep Into Soul cares about the sound. I'm sure they do. Bobby Zoo and Garage City care about the sound. People that are doing these parties for years care about the sound. But a lot of these new promoters, I don't think that's their main focus, to make sure that their equipment is up to date and the sound. It's about, we've turned the electric on, let's get the lights, and that's the difference. Attention to detail is not the same.
Lord have mercy.
Mm.
That's all I can say. It's terrible that to even hear this. It's like you wouldn't dream of walking to a spot and the decks are like this.
No, I know, it's true. It's true. You know what's funny about that gig? When it goes, look, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to take the monitor and take it downstairs. Okay, okay. So they took the monitor.
Excuse me, we're gonna have to take one of the Pioneers too. So you're gonna work on one Pioneer,
Exactly.
the mixer,
Yeah,
and one speaker.
yeah, exactly. No, there was no speaker because they'd taken one already and they had to take the other one. So it was like, and I think then what happens is, because it's such a, I don't know, I wouldn't say terrible gig, but it wasn't great. You come across as not that good too. Do you understand what I mean? And it was, yeah, it was tough, tough.
You don't recover from things like that
No, you don't.
because somebody on the dance floor is just looking up and they don't know that you don't have a monitor
Yeah,
or two working decks
yeah.
or a mixer or whatever. They don't
Or
know. They're just
the
like, oh,
phone.
he was rubbish.
Yeah, I know. It destroys you. It really does destroy you.
And the word comes out and says, that guy, risk assessment tired
Exactly.
with a capital T.
Yeah. It's funny, when I went to get paid, they were like, doing drugs in the corner. And I was like, okay. And they were like, I'm really, really sorry. We just had a really bad day because you know what we have to do. And I said, I don't mind you doing your thing. You don't have to explain to me. Yeah, I'm just come to get paid. Oh, didn't we tell you you have to invoice? I said, well, if you'd have told me that, you don't think I would have invoiced you, coming from London to Manchester, right? But they paid me like a few days later, but it was like, that would have never happened back in the day. You got your money as you walked in, or you had a deal and that was it. So it was
The money would have been folded
exactly,
each
and you got
hundred.
it, and they go, here you are while you're playing, you know? Now, and it's not about the money for me, but I would never do a gig for free. And that's happening a lot over here right now. A lot of people are DJing for free, and
That's another I was gonna say. The art of the actual promotion, the art of the play, the art of performance has been bastardized at so
yeah,
many different levels. It's
yeah,
terrible.
that's true. And I don't even mind the sync button. I don't really mind it. I think a lot of DJs now today, it's all about dancing behind the decks rather than mixing. I don't mind the sync button because it's there and it's there to be used. And I know lots of big DJs that use it, but it has taken away the art because people are not really learning. I mean, my friend just bought a controller recently and he was learning it. And I was talking to him on FaceTime, and every time he was like hitting the button to start the record. And I said, is it a tape recorder or a turntable? And he said, a turntable. I said, then why are you doing that? Do that. Start it like that. That's what you got to be doing. And he said that's the best advice I could have ever given him, because he was just like, yeah, start this, start that. It's not a tape recorder. It's a deck. So do your thing. So, yeah, at least we can give the good advice, right, Lenny?
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
If anything I have to offer the wealth is maybe some advice at this stage.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because for a lot of us feel sometimes it's just like, look, the curse is the difference.
Mm.
You lived at a time where it was and truly important to make a performer do his best, because It's like a Formula One car. If the car's got Christ, if the car has flats, the engine's not is misfiring, how do you expect to win anything?
Exactly, exactly.
But then again, I will say this, then again, mediocrity seems to be the champion now.
Yeah,
Mediocre is the
yeah.
way forward now. It's not
It's,
about being the greatest or the
no,
best.
it's not. It's just about playing good music and knowing you're playing good music. I mean, one of the things that I'm jumping now, I saw that Simon Dunmore had just signed a deal with Armanda Music, or I don't know if I've said that right. And I think one of the things that I read him say was, we're just looking to make hits or sign hits and stuff like that. And he was a massive force in the music in the sense of when he was at Cool Tempo and AMPM and getting these fantastic remixes. I mean, he was such a dope A&R guy, and to know that he's coming back, I'm just hoping that he's coming back in the way that he was before. No gatekeeping. Not I'm saying he was. I'm not saying he was, but I hope that he's coming back in a way where they're going to be using all of these great producers from back in the day and new ones like Dennis Ferreira, and even John, even try and get Mood to Swing back together because the finances will be there and just release good, solid music, great songs, and great production. I'm just hoping for that. I really want that so badly.
Was that made mention clearly that he was going to go that route, like to bring back those masses at work type of things?
No,
And
he never said that. I thought
are you just hoping that he's going to be
I'm
doing it?
hoping that he's going to do that because I can't imagine what else. He knows everybody. He knows all of these great producers. He knows them very well. And I'm sure they'd love to work for him because he's a really likable guy. So I'm hoping that that's what he can do. I'm really do. Otherwise, what's the point? If you're going to do what everyone else is doing, then what's the point? And I think that Simon's history on music and the soul. I mean, I spoke to Simon probably about 10 years ago. I went to Covent Garden and I went to look to a sports shop and he was in there with his wife and we were talking for ages and he was talking about the music and DJs and what's changed now and there's no soul in the music anymore and stuff like that. And that was back then. So I think that now he's coming back. I don't think he needs to be doing another Defected. I think he done that. I think he needs to just come with good soulful music and I think that's what he's all about. I think he's all about the soul.
And if I know you, you're all about the song too, and you'll be right there grabbing at it.
Listen, I've got such fantastic music that I have done that I found a really great singer on TikTok, the lady called Jackie Bennett. And I heard her on TikTok and somebody has kind of posted her on a garage thing, a UK garage thing, but just hearing her perform in the club. And I knew absolutely nothing about her. And I messaged her and we started to have a chat. And she was telling me that she'd done a couple of things with Tough Jam back in the day that were really, really big. And she gets booked for all of these things. I'm like, how come I've never ever heard of you? And we had a long conversation, and I was asking questions like, "How much does she charge?" And she told me, and I said, "What is that? It is that all you're worth? Is that what you're going to charge everybody?" Right? So we had this rapport from the beginning, and then I gave her a couple of instrumental records to listen to and just to write something. And she just wrote two fantastic songs. And we went in the studio. I went in there with a keyboard player. I've done two tracks with her. I'm doing two more on the 19th of this month. And what we came up with and the sound of what we did, I'm super, super, super excited about it. And then linking up with Willie Washington, who I mentioned earlier, who's got like loads of vocals and lots of songs that he's written and working with him is kind of like I feel like I just can't wait for next year. Like everything that's up there, everything that I'm putting up out this year is already up there through my distributor, ready to go. Every 2 weeks there's something. But with Myrna starting next year, and I'm just doing all the music now, and I'm hoping even some of the stuff that I've done, I'll send it to Simon and see if he wants to sign it first. Oh yeah, of course. Why not? A lot better being on a label that's going to get exposure because he's involved. And then if he doesn't want it, then I'll put it on my label. But yeah, I would love to do some work with Simon because I really love what he does.
I think we covered all the future.
Yes,
And
we
we can
have.
only say, you know what? Good luck to you on your
Yeah.
journey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wherever this takes you, you know what? We're going to be there rooting for you with our
Thank
pom
you.
poms out.
Can't wait. Love it.
Well, everyone, you just heard Glyne Brathwaite's story of what truly makes a risk assessment, a calculated risk, I should say, because
Calculated risk.
that's it. At the end of the day, it's about making the risk and hope for the reward. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's
as
true.
I always thought, it's expect the worst and hope for the best.
Like I said, I just put the music out, and I'm just very lucky that people like it, and I'm
But
very
you got good ears, brother. You have good ears. As an A&R
yeah.
man, promotions guy, you have good ears. So it's not a matter of is it going to be good? It's a matter of does this particular record work? Because no matter sometimes as much as you connect all the dots and you put everything in place, sometimes they just don't work
Oh
for
yeah, I was
whatever
gonna
reason.
say before we go, I have one record. It was really like I did a record with Vanessa Freeman called, and it did a cover of Lil Lewis's "Do You Love Me," right? And I went in there with Mike Pato in the studio, and I was like a fish out of water. And I'm in the studio, I'm in awe of Vanessa, I'm in awe of Mike Pato and all of those guys. And I'm in a studio that I'm not used to, right? And there were so many things that I wanted to do and change, and I didn't do anything because I was dumbstruck. And I was like, this record is cursed, it's cursed. And I got John Cutler remixes, it didn't do well. I did different remixes myself, it didn't do well. It was just like, and that was because I did not feel that, even though it was my record, I didn't feel that I was like pushing it in the directions that I needed it to go to make it sound the way that I wanted to because I was in awe. So that's what I mean. You can do records, you can put your heart and soul into it, you can spend a lot of money on it, but if the people are not feeling it, they're not feeling it. It's just the luck of the draw.
And that's it, my brothers and sisters and children. You just learned it from the man himself. Sometimes things are just not meant, no matter how hard we try. It's that square in the circle.
Yep.
Fixing that square in a circle. We all know what that's like. It just doesn't seem to go. Check back with us next time to all the legends and famous people and wonderful record producers and DJs and artists that have crossed our paths. And Glyne, we all could say, God bless you and wish you all the best to any of the endeavors. And you know what? Your greatest award has to be to watch your son thrive,
Yes.
aside
Oh,
from
yeah.
everything
That's
else.
true.
Take care, everyone. Thank you again. See you all soon. Ta ta.
Bye.